Welcome to the Fantasy Syndicate Podcast with your hosts, Joshua Poniatowski and Alex Taylor. Let's talk football.
Hello, and welcome to the Fantasy Syndicate Podcast. My name is Joshua Poniatowski. With me, as always, Alex Taylor. What's going on, dude?
What up?
So, Alex, we were in championships week this past week. Both of us had championship games to play, but you can go ahead and get us started. How did you do?
I won. Yeah. I won my family league.
Congratulations.
Pretty decent little payout. Shout out to Gibbs because that last second, end of the game, fourth quarter, I think it was like 45 yards, something like that, touchdown scamper, won it for me. I was sitting there like down 5 points still, freaking out. Sleeper literally had me at 1% chance to win. I was like, no, I would be just short. And then boom, he just rips it. And I was like freaking out. But it was kind of cool. So, so I got four redraft leagues I'm in. In three of them, the number one seed won it all. They were the clear best team all season, and then they did it. The number one seed did it. And then in my fourth one, complete opposite, the sixth seed went ahead and won it all. And not only that, he barely got in on tiebreaker. If you remember that like week 13 game when the Cowboys blocked the punt but then botched it, and then they gave the ball back to Burrow, and then he scored a touchdown with Chase. That play, that botched block punt by the Cowboys,
points for
was enough for this guy to sneak into the sixth seed, and then his team just popped off. Like T. Higgins, Lab McConkey just went crazy in the postseason and won it all. So it was kind of a good mix of, hey, anyone's got a shot once they're in the playoffs, but also three out of the four were the team that probably deserved it the most, did it, kept it alive, kept it running. But how about yourself, Josh? How'd yours go?
Yeah, unfortunately, I did not win. The person I played just put up a monster outing. He had Lamar. I think every single one of his players scored over 10 points, even the kicker. And some of them put up 40 spot. He had T. Higgins, he had Jamar Chase.
Ooh, gosh.
So he had Lamar. So it was just a rough week for me. Even though the players I had were great. So yeah.
He had Higgins and Chase, so it was kind of like, even if Higgins didn't pop off, it would have gone to Chase anyways. You were a little screwed either regardless on how that played out.
Yeah, I did have Burrow stolen them touchdowns, so I took some of that away. But a
little bit of neutralized.
But Jamar, that was a PPR game. I mean, if you saw the stat line, like that was probably the most receptions. Like I think Jamar had 10. Kosicki had at least 9. Like there was just so many targets to go around. It's PPR league, so just a monster outing. Even though Jamar didn't have the touchdowns, he still put up I think almost 20 yards.
That game started kind of slow in the first half, and then it really ramped up in the second half, and then overtime. Like so many points were had in that last like overtime and 10 minutes of the regular action game. But
yeah. So it's all good. Moving on to next year, I feel like I became a better fantasy player, better at in that league, and I really thought I had probably one of the best teams I've ever developed from like an overall playoff picture standpoint. But it's all good, and we're going to jump into end of season takeaway. So like these are things that we need to be mindful of next year when 3, 4, 5, 6 months go by. We forgot all the lessons we learned, so we're going to do kind of a recap, lessons learned, end of season takeaways that we can then revisit before next year, so that we don't get too much in our feels, we don't get too much into the hype and those types of things, and we can bring ourselves back down to earth a little bit. So
once those training camp reports start hitting, you get excited on the new frenzy, and you forget about the old tried and true stuff.
Absolutely. And the videos that come out, like Chubb, I remember squatting was like a huge thing. Like, oh, he's gonna go crazy, and so but so just to keep us honest in that situation. So my first takeaway is to target talented players on good offenses. And I know that just sounds so ridiculous. Boom. Like, duh. Like that's such an easy takeaway. But we honestly just get into these hype trains about players. We get sometimes too caught up and in the actual talent of the player, and we don't look at the bigger picture of the team, their offensive coordinator, the things that go into it. So just to be mindful of that, like targeting players on good offense. And I'll give you an example. So the Ravens, Detroit, and Tampa Bay had the 3 highest yards of the season. Some of those 3 were also, I think, top 4 in points a game, point scorers throughout the season. The Bears, on average, had 1,000 less yards and scored almost 200 less points than kind of the average collective of those 3 teams. So we talk about like a fantasy impact. We're talking almost 300 fantasy points if you took a Bears player versus one of the other guys that were more talented inside. And I took DJ Moore, and I was a DJ Moore truther
Bears
all
players
year.
were flying. Bears players were flying in the draft.
For sure. And he didn't do bad. I think he finished wide receiver 21 in half PPR, but those are just the things of kind of taking a bigger picture at the actual team when you're drafting. We're looking at players on who we think is going to pop off and do well. So I just wanted to make sure I brought that one up right away. And, it seems obvious, but it's true.
Yeah, I think the overarching thought I have is just avoid like the cursed teams. It's like Bears are cursed, Jets are cursed, Browns are cursed, Jags. Like they're just like you get excited each year and they just keep letting you down. I feel like I want to just I'll wait. Like let someone else find like the one-off year like that they've flipped it. Because it's probably not like they're all 4 of those teams are probably going to suck again next year. Maybe there's one that gets it together. I'm not gambling on which one it is because they're all cursed and they all just suck every year. So,
yeah.
My biggest takeaway was just the overall rebirth of the RB position and its value. Over like recent years, the wide receiver position has started to take over the reins as kind of like those top like flex eligible players. A general consensus top 10 preseason had about like 6 receivers going in the first round last year. I think, pretty collectively. They were considered the deeper position, less prone to injury, less likely to fall off a cliff due to age. I mean, we saw a little bit of that with like Tyreek. But, the pendulum has now swung back. I mean, the NFL defenses have been implementing this deeper cover 2 kind of prevent aspect to really limit these explosive big passing plays. It's kind of why like Mahomes' value is kind of really shot down a lot. But this is then, like I said, that pendulum swung. So this has now allowed the running backs to have more room to work with and reclaim some of their swag. I mean, looking back over the previous 4 seasons combined, there were 51 seasons worth of receivers to crack 200 points in half PPR compared to 47 RB seasons over the last 4 years. So 51, 47, pretty close.
Yeah.
Pretty close, but slight advantage to receivers. This year, however, there was only 7 receivers that cracked 200 and 17 by running backs, 10 more, more than double. So I just, I see this shift back to the classic RB draft combo 1-2 punch next year. And we're going to do a little bit of a top 10 a little later, but I just see a lot more value in the RB position.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and look at the data. I wonder why that was that they were so so like significant. 10 is pretty significant. I mean, looking at the percentages too, that's a almost 40% difference there. So I feel like, I honestly don't know. I'd have to look at the data because cowbells are hard to come by. We've seen a decent amount of split backfield, at least bell cows. I know I like to do that. So honestly, I don't know why that has been, but you're right. Like the middle tier running back has seemed to kind of take off, and we saw it with a lot of guys this year. Chuba was a great example. Tony Pollard had his ups and downs. So yeah, it's interesting.
Josh Jacobs.
Well, Josh Jacobs was
Cook. I mean, a lot of them were just popping off.
Yeah. So. Yeah, for sure. So don't undervalue mid-tier running backs and go into the draft with like some specific strategy that like running backs in rounds 5 through 8 are bad because historically they've been, which is obviously not the case in this year with all the running back pop-offs there. Talking about the draft and a tactical advantage, this has always been my belief of the situation, and waiting on quarterbacks is something that I usually do. I know Superflex, it's a very different monster, but I'm talking about non-Superflex leagues. Maybe even Superflex, you get away with this based off of the data, right? But
it's rough out there in Superflex if you don't have good quarterbacks. It is rough.
Well, I mean, I think there's a tier drop-off. significant tier drop off. So there were 6 quarterbacks this year that were drafted within the first 6 rounds. So again, not super flex, but still, this gives you a gauge of like who is going where. I'm going to list these players' ADP in the order that they were drafted, and then also mention where that they finished. So Josh Allen was quarterback 2. Josh Allen was quarterback 1. He finished as quarterback 2. Patrick Mahomes was the second quarterback, right? That's respectable. Even though it was a second-round pick, I think you had to give up for him. But Patrick Mahomes was the third quarterback off the board. He finished as quarterback 10. Jalen Hurts was the third quarterback off the board. He finished as quarterback 7. Granted, he did get hurt the last 2 games of the season, so that number tanked those last 2 games, unfortunately. Lamar was the 4th quarterback off the board in the 4th round. He finished as quarterback 1 by pretty significant margin. Quarterback 5, CJ Stroud, finishes 18. Your man, Anthony Richardson, was the 5th quarterback off the board. Finishes quarterback 23. I also looked at the past couple years of data, and this has been a trend. Top pick quarterbacks underperform later round quarterbacks. If you can find the ones that are popping off, it's happening at a higher rate, then you get a tactical advantage by not giving up a high draft pick on a quarterback and being able to find ones late. We did the top 5. I posted on Twitter. I know, Alex, I texted it to you. But the top 5 quarterbacks that were league winners based off of average ADP, total points, and average points in the playoffs were Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, Jaden Daniels, Joe Burrow, and Jared Goff. And Lamar was the only one in the top 6 rounds. All the rest came 7th later. Some of them were 10th, 16th, 11th round. So you can get a lot of value late with quarterbacks. And I think that should be the direction you should go, especially in one quarterback leagues. Just my thought process there.
Yeah. Especially, it depends on the depth of the league. I think anyone in a 10-man single quarterback league, it just isn't worth that value, really. I mean, just let them slide. You'll hit somewhere. You just be nimble. You can kind of bounce around. See, maybe you draft a guy, maybe sucks, but you didn't commit much to him, so you can drop him a lot easier, emotionally, than having a high draft pick, and you just you feel like you got to ride him out. But yeah, does Stroud suck? I don't know.
It's tough. Yeah, watching him play has not been great. And when we get into our top 10 rankings list, it's one of the reasons why I left somebody that you have on your list versus me not having him on my list.
I contemplated it. I figured, man, they started so good on the season. I was like, maybe it'll happen again. My next observation on the season is that the old reliable security blanket tight ends stayed as the old reliable security blanket tight ends. There are a lot of young, explosive tight ends in the league, which is exciting. I mean, Trey McBride's awesome. Brock Bowers is awesome. Laporta's is Laporta back now, I guess? I don't know. He's had a good
last 3-4 weeks.
Good last month or so.
Solid. Yeah, for sure.
This is all exciting, but there's also the tried and true tight ends that just keep getting it done. We both had Kelsey, Kittle, and Mandrews in our top 5 preseason tight end rankings, and it wasn't always pretty, especially with Mandrews. It was not always pretty, but they finished as tight ends 2, 5, and 6 on the season. Everyone's gonna be clawing to draft Bowers and McBride next season. But I just think don't be too afraid to maybe wait it out and just get an old buck on the cheap.
Yeah, I mean, Kittle was somebody that I had at my number 1 at one point, and I slowly got beat down, by stuff that I read and news and just all of that went on. And I slowly bumped him down my rankings. He's still in my top 5, but he finished as tight end 1. He did what he's done literally for the past 5-6 years in his career. So yeah, don't overthink tight ends, at least, and take a shot on a rookie, right? Bowers went so late in drafts. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that actually in one of my observations. The next observation though is if a solid running back goes to a better team, draft them. Saquon Barkley finishes running back 1. Derrick Henry finishes running back 2. Josh Jacobs finished as running back 6. Those are all proof that we were literally just overthinking this whole situation. We had a good running back who was on a terrible team go to a good team or decent team at least, and they all produced. Next year, the list of available running backs isn't quite as juicy as it was this past year, but Aaron Jones is on that list. Najee Harris, who I know gets underappreciated every single year. This man has put up 1,000 yards since he's entered the league. 1,000-yard seasons.
So like slow when you watch
People
him.
hate on him. They just hate this man.
He just runs 3 yards and falls down.
So
hey,
it's
like a guaranteed
1,000 yards.
He gets yeah.
Mike Evans, same thing. He gets his 1,000 yards. He moves on with his life. Okay.
I didn't even do an update. I didn't even write an update for that. I think it needs like 85 yards, I believe. But I forgot to write that out.
Okay.
So here's one thing I kind of noticed.
Yeah.
Positive touchdown regression to the mean is not always a guarantee. I mean, I feel like we kind of talk about it like, oh, this guy's going to blow up because he had so few touchdowns last year. It was kind of like he's due for touchdowns. That's not always the case. In 2023, so not this season, the season before, Breece Hall finished as RB4 on the season. He did that while only scoring 9 total touchdowns. 4 of them were receiving 9 total touchdowns. No other RB in the top 6 had less than 12. So everyone just assumed he was due. Rodgers is coming back. And when that happens, he's going to be more productive, get more touchdowns, and he's going to be even better. Boom. We both had him as our RB2 on the preseason. Well, 2024 season, this season, he's only had 7. And he only got 9 carries from within the 10-yard line. That's tied for 40th among running backs. Some guys are just not built to be down low in the trenches in the red zone. I don't know. Sometimes, you just can't always just assume people are going to get more touchdowns next year.
And I think that goes back to point number 1 that I made about drafting good players on good offenses, right? I'm just saying, the Jets literally were one of the lowest scoring teams in the league. They scored 306 total points, and that was only above Carolina, Jacksonville, Tennessee, the Raiders, Chicago, New England, Giants, and Cleveland, who isn't a great company to be in. Detroit scored 533 points on the year. So we're talking hundreds of points difference here. So the talent is there. And we also can't control Breland Allen, right? A rookie draft pick came in late round. Coaches decided to use him even, in a unique way, almost half the season before the head coach got fired. So those are some of the things you can't necessarily predict. So yeah, it's a good observation.
This all goes back to my point. Avoid cursed teams.
There you go.
Simple.
Yes.
Simple.
Yeah.
Just write them out. Write them out. Take them off your board entirely. It's like the NFL teams when the guy just was hitting a mask bong and they're just like, nope, he's off. This is like way harsher.
We're not dealing with this.
It's like no, we don't touch that. I don't touch cursed teams.
Yeah, I mean, there's a culture there for sure. Like the Jets, unfortunately, have a losing culture, and that spreads throughout the teams. Did you see it was a Twitter discussion? I forget who it is. I think it was T. Higgins is a free agent, and somebody commented on his just dropped another bomb.
Go to the Jets.
Yeah, it was like go to the Jets, and somebody was like Sauce Gardner convinced him to come here, and Sauce said, "I'm not convincing him to come to the Jets." Like he literally was like, absolutely not. Like, why would I do that to this man? Save
yourself, bro.
Yeah, seriously. So it was just that mindset that goes behind it. It's 100% true.
Yeah.
So the next takeaway is, and this is something that I typically do not do, and I haven't done. I typically avoid rookies in drafts just because they aren't proven assets. However, my takeaway is to take a shot on rookies late in drafts. Players are entering the league more NFL ready than ever, and I think this has a lot to do with NIL deals, right? Players who are still getting big money, maybe don't have the incentive anymore to just enter the draft to try to get some gains, try to get some money. They can now stay in college, maybe make more than they would, or at least make a comparable amount, develop their skills, get better, transfer to different teams, and get paid to do it. So outside Marvin Harrison Jr. and Neighbors, the next highest round rookie was Roma Dunze, who went right around the 8th or 9th round. So you're paying a premium for Marvin Harrison Jr., somewhat of a premium for Neighbors. And I want to go through the list of rookie draft locations and where they finished on the year. I did these based off of the value I thought they brought to the team at their draft position. Okay. So this isn't just like ADP rankings. It's where I thought they like finished on the year and brought value to your team. So number 1 was Brian Thomas Jr. He finished as wide receiver 4 on the year, and he was drafted in the 11th round. Some people were probably taking kickers before him. Brock Bowers was next. He was tight end 2 on the year, which performed like wide receiver 10, by the way, from receptions area. He was a 10th round draft pick. Jaden Daniels, quarterback 4 on the year, league winner potentially, 10th round. Lad McConkey, wide receiver 13 on the year, 11th, potential league winner.
Insane
11th round.
Game,
Yeah, crazy championship game. Malik Neighbors, right? You had to play a 5th round premium for him, but he still finished wide receiver 7. Honestly, that's value for a rookie. Absolutely. Caleb Williams, not a great performance, quarterback 15, but he was a 10th round pick, still late. Xavier Worthy didn't really start popping off until the last couple weeks of the season. They started getting more involved, but finished wide receiver 30. And again, 9th round pick. It's not like you're giving up too much juice there. Roma Dunze was actually the worst. He was wide receiver 47 on the year, finished like 8th round. I think he was drafted 8th, 9th. And then Marvin Harrison Jr., I put him at the bottom of my list because he was a 2nd round pick. I avoided this man in every league. I was way too high for a rookie, and he finished as wide receiver 31. So
shout out Nick. Shout out Nick, because I know he's probably listening, but we drafted together, and he took Marvin Harrison with the 15th overall pick. And at the time, I'm like, bro,
crazy, man.
Even if he's like at his best, that's fit, like he'd be drafted at the 15th spot.
Right,
I'm like, you are like, that is, you're drafting him as a ceiling, and he's a rookie. But we had a first couple good games. He was trying to clap back a little bit, be like, see, and I was like,
you always want to see a good your young rookie wide receiver do well, and I think Marvin Harrison does have some good stuff in the future. And sometimes you got to take a shot, right? Maybe you didn't have any Marvin Harrison, diversify the portfolio, right? Mix it up a little bit. So I get it.
Man, talking about young receivers not really living up to the hype. A rule for me next season: do not touch Green Bay wide receivers, at least unless you are completely aware of the risk. Going into the year, we weren't sure who was going to become the number 1 option in the Packers offense. And after a whole season, guess what? We still don't know. Even Jaden Reed, who was, I guess their most productive receiver, he only cracked double digits 4 times in a half PPR setting. And none of those were a game without a touchdown. If he didn't get a touchdown, he was in single digits. This is a run-first offense that likes to spread the ball around. And when they are throwing, they spread the ball around when they are throwing it. And Love is okay at this point. I think we've determined Love is like an NFL caliber quarterback, but he's not nearly good enough to support this many mouths to feed on an offense that's going to run first anyways.
Yeah. Green Bay has been an enigma. I think Buffalo falls into that kind of category as well, where like everybody eats, they do what they can to win the football games. And there's not like a specific person that they're 100% going to go to all the time. So I think Buffalo falls in that category. I was just looking at it. So you said Jaden Reed only had 4 10-point performances
in half PPR.
So if we're talking about wide receiver 1, then I just looked at Tucker Kraft because I know he had some pop-offs.
Oh, gosh.
He has
for sure.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over 10-point performances in half PPR. So, maybe he's wide receiver 1 at this point, but that just goes to show like how much they spread the ball around. And going back to the first point, right? They're a good offense. They got good players, but we also know the bigger picture of how this team operates. So these might be players you tend to avoid next year because of that offensive production. All right, moving into the next point. Don't draft injured players who are not going to play for 6 weeks of the season. Let me repeat that one more time. Don't draft injured players who aren't going to play for 6 weeks plus more of the season. Just don't do it.
What if there's hype? What if there's hype
Just
there?
don't
You know, like what if
do it.
sick
Okay?
gym picks going on, and you're just like, he's gonna
That's what'll happen.
rage.
That's exactly what happened with Chubb. That happened with Jonathan Brooks. There was murmurs out there. TJ Hawkinson. So these are 3 perfect examples because preseason just hyped them up. They were not playing. It did not matter. These guys, I think, were like 10th to 14th round picks. Most leagues got drafted in. There has been so many injuries in the first couple weeks of the season because preseason is a glorified way to let rookies get opportunities. The veterans don't really play anymore. So when season comes and they go in full, 100%, obviously they're ready, but we're seeing more injuries at that point because of that. So you're going to end up not being able to hold on to these guys for 6, 7, 8 weeks. Even CMC, right? Look at CMC. He is number 1 draft pick, and he was out beginning of the season. How many good games did he give you? Maybe 2, maybe if that, and you wasted a roster spot all year on him.
Yeah.
So.
Well, at the time, people didn't know he wasn't going to start for the first 6 weeks. I mean, he definitely would not have gone first overall if the report of going to Germany had come out.
Yeah, but still, though, think about it. If the report was he's going to go to Germany, he'll be out for 6 to 8 weeks. Where do you think hypothetically he would have went in the draft if Chubb was going in 10th round, 10th, 12th round? Where do you think CMC would have went?
Probably
yeah,
4th.
That's what I'm saying. Like, my man's not even going to play for 6+ weeks, and people still value an injured CMC over starters. So just, I didn't get fooled by this takeaway.
I mean, Kirk Cousins just looks dead now after he came back from an injury.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, I don't know. There wasn't really any good bounce back
players
storylines of this season. I can't think none are popping in my head.
I mean, DeMar Hamlin, I think, had a pretty solid year as far as on defense goes, and so.
Well, yeah, I'm talking.
Okay, yeah. I know.
I'm
what
talking
you're saying. I was
fantasy
trying to find
purposes
somebody.
of anyone who kind of
find somebody.
So, if you got I got keeper leagues and stuff like that, where you can always kind of look to maybe draft because that's why I draft some of these injured guys sometimes in my keeper league because it's I can use them next year at that draft slot. It's
yeah.
It's oh, well, that's a gamble. But there really wasn't, I don't think, anybody who really came back from an injury and was more productive this season. I don't know.
Yeah.
But speaking of draft, my last advice or just thing I noted this year is just don't be afraid to take your guys. Sometimes the word gets out and you just gotta overspend. This year I really like BTJ. I thought he was just a really good late round sleeper pick. And I thought I was able to scoop him up cheap in all my auction drafts. But by the time he got around to where he was up on the docket, he was going for way more than I anticipated. And I was either too broke or I was kind of just afraid to allocate all the last of my money and just have to do $1 for the rest of my draft. In hindsight, I definitely should have. But I was just scared. It just kind of shows you can't always plan for the exact prices of players in auction drafts. I do have one snake draft, but unfortunately got scooped up very early by a Jags fan. Can't really, do much there. It happens, but to me, he was just my one that got away this year. I was into him, I wanted him, and it just didn't work out. And I'm like, sometimes I overthink things, especially in auctions. I'm like, I'm planning too meticulously, and you just got to be like, hey, if you like a guy, just take a guy.
Yeah, pay a couple bucks more in auction. Yeah, the guys for me that were kind of like that this year, one was Rashid Rice. I love that man going in this year. In our Dynasty League, I gave up some juice even before, this was March, April time period before the draft to get him on my Dynasty team. That was one of the guys I like. Unfortunately, he got injured. Jaden Daniels was another one that I missed on. That it was auction. I think it was $12, and I was like, "That's too rich for my blood." So as another guy, I should have.
If it's a one QB league, $12 for a QB that lays, it is kind of expensive. So someone must have been hot on him.
Yep. And so, he went off and he was a league winning quarterback. But yeah, you're right. Take your guys, go for the guys that you like, trust your gut in a lot of situations. But remember everything else that we just told you. All right, so that is officially, I would say, wrapping up the 2024 kind of takeaway of the season. So we're going to get a little sneaky here. And I'm going to remember these because we need to go back once we do our rankings,
For sure.
however many months
For
from
sure.
now, 8+ months from now. But we're going to give you our way too early top 10. Alex, you can go ahead and get us started off, and we're just going to run through the list. Maybe we'll talk about some of these guys a little bit, but for the most part, we're just going to kind of go down the list. So what you got?
All right. So first up, we got a guy who's possibly making history here. Possibly set the rushing record. I think Saquon Barkley goes 1. And then I got Jamar Chase in the 2 spot. I mean, you can make a case for either one really going 1-2, in my opinion. It's just a matter of if you want the running back versus the wide receiver spot. So I got 1 Saquon, 2 Jamar, 3 I got Bijan. Kind of started a little slow. We were a little worried about him there for a bit, but he has just been so solid lately. 4 I got Justin Jefferson. He really just kind of proved he's, I wouldn't say quarterback proof, because I mean Sam Darnold's been playing really well, but he's just proven that he can do. He's football. JJ. He does whatever he needs to do. 5, I'm going to go CD Lamb. I know this year was a little disappointing considering he was like my number 1 overall pick. But I think Dallas kind of figures it out. Maybe Dak comes back healthy. Who knows? Maybe they get a new coach. I don't know. 6, I got the guy who won me my championship last night, Jahmyr Gibbs, with that sexy 45-yard touchdown at the very end of the game.
Yep.
Monty should be back. I mean, he's dealing with a little bit of injury. I think Gibbs he's got a surprisingly high floor for a guy in an RB by committee. It's kind of scary.
He's so good.
7,
man. He's so good.
7, I got Puka Nacua. I don't know what happened to Cooper Kupp. He's done. He just looks, he's toast.
Seems cooked.
So Puka is just getting crap ton of targets every week. So I got him in the 7 spot. 8, this is where me and Josh are going to differ a little bit, I think. I got Nico Collins. That first month or so to the season, I mean, there was absolutely no receiver better than the NFL. He was just going berserk. Can they reclaim that magic? I'm hoping so. 9, I got Amon-Ra St. Brown. He did, I mean, this is maybe lower than I actually had him this year, which is probably a disservice because he proved what his value is, that he has the highest floor of any receiver in the game. He just goes out every week and just gets it done. He's good for like 80 yards on a score basically every week. Finally, number 10, I'm going to roll the dice here and put in a little Christian McCaffrey. I mean, we got to see how his recovery goes and everything.
Spice. Yeah.
But I mean, the Niners are proven without him, they suck. They can't make it to the playoffs. So they need this man. They need him. So if he comes back, obviously everyone knows what Christian McCaffrey can do if he's healthy and playing well. He just takes over games. So that's my way too early top 10. What do you got for us, Josh?
CMC at the top, or top 10. That's risky business for sure.
But it's right at that turn. So it's like you take it.
Yeah.
It's right at the turn,
There might be some other guys around there for sure. Nico Collins, I think, is a CJ Stroud dependent. The crazy thing about Nico is, like, as the season went on, he got less and less competition. Like, fully healthy
Diggs
team early on. Yeah,
Tank
like
Dell
Diggs
going
went
out.
out. Like, okay, now Tank Dell. Like it was literally all the playmakers around him who would take production from him just weren't there, and maybe that's why we saw a down regression of CJ. He just lost a lot of the weapons that he typically has.
Well, just getting doubled all the time too, probably for Nico.
It's true. Yep, defense for sure. All right, well, my top 10 doesn't differ too much from Alex's. There are some adjustments, I think, later kind of in the picks, which is what we saw historically. But Saquon, I got my number 1. Number 2, I got Bijan Robinson. He is just so good at running back. And I think having a running back like that on your team just opens up a lot from, the wide receiver standpoint later in drafts, even though we just talked about running backs reigning supreme in those middle picks. Jamar Chase, number 3, then Justin Jefferson, same reason, elite talent. Amon-Ra St. Brown, consistency. CD Lamb, I got him next. I think he's also going to have a bounce back. Like, these are the tier that we're talking about right now, elite talent, right? Like,
for
these
sure,
are guys that aren't just good because their team is good. They are good because they are just elite level players. And if something does happen to their team, they typically are still viable options, especially wide receivers. Puka Nacua, number 7. Just he's been a PPR machine, just getting all the targets. We've seen the fall off of Cup. Then I got Jahmyr Gibbs. This is where we kind of differ a little bit from the Spice. I got Devon Achane. Man, he is a wide receiver. Yeah, I do. And if Tua is healthy, that's the one caveat to Achane is if Tua is unhealthy, Achane sucks. If Tua is healthy, he's a slot wide receiver playing running back. And the next one also might be a little crazy, but Chase Brown, dude. I feel like Chase Brown, he is the only running back who got 100% of the opportunities for multiple weeks. And he's on a Bengals offense that we know can move the ball. Like, not much is going to change. Maybe T. Higgins maybe gets a contract, maybe not. But if he is their guy next year and he is running back 1, he's getting targets like Achane. He's getting the opportunities like Bijan or Saquon on the ground. So I feel like he's got to be in a top 10 running back mix just because of that. So those are my top 10.
I like Chase. I mean, the Bengals might have a very interesting offseason, and we kind of wait. I mean, their coach, Zach Taylor might get fired. I'm assuming they miss the playoffs here. What happens with T. Higgins? Do they get a little some O-line help? Who knows? I know you love Devon Achane. He's a beast. No one can really deny his pass catching prowess, but like the crazy thing about him at his rookie year was he was at 7.8 yards per rush, which is just like insane.
Yeah.
He really kind of got bottled up this year. He dropped all the way down to 4.1, which is like, it's fine. It's fine. It just isn't really like elite rushing. But again, that whole Miami offense was really dependent on Tua being there, not being there, like what's going on. So I don't know. I mean, I like him. I think there's a clear upside. Like when he has his boom games and he's just faster than everybody else, he just goes insane. I just think he's a little like streaky for me in the first round.
Well, Mostert was a huge reason for that the previous year, right? I mean, Mostert had the most touchdowns on the year. So he took a lot of opportunities from Achane, which inflated his yards per attempt because he didn't need to run the ball, every time or consistently. Whereas this year, they gave Achane majority of the opportunities that they would have maybe mixed in Mostert. So that dropped it down. But that pass catching upside, man, I just can't pass on. That's what I love about that. All right, well, that is kind of going to close out our season. And we're, just so y'all know, we're going to take about a week or 2 off to start developing some Dynasty content. We're going to be back in the offseason talking about trades, coaching changes, NFL draft, literally all things Dynasty that are equally as important to redraft leagues, kind of keep you on your toes. First of all, thank you all for joining us in our kind of first inaugural season. So we appreciate that you're here. We're excited for season 2. And Alex, do you want to add anything or say thank you to our listeners or anything else?
Yeah, just thanks everybody. It's been a really fun kind of challenge for us this year to kind of put all this together, try to get a feel for, the flow of it every week, kind of, structurally. I mean, obviously we do a lot of stuff that isn't on here, the recording part too, but so it's been kind of fun to try to find different angles to consider, to talk about interesting content, which I feel like has then also helped me become a better fantasy player in the process. Sure. Plus, it just makes, my already existing fantasy obsession somehow seem like more productive in a way. Right. It's like, no. I'm only doing this for the podcast people. That's why I'm on my phone or computer for hours on end, just looking at on a random Tuesday night, just looking up stats and stuff like that. So it's been really fun. Just appreciate all the support from everybody. Thanks.
Absolutely, y'all. And we hope y'all stole your championship, and we'll see y'all next year. Later.
Peace.